Hi everyone, so today me and Joanna are going to present on the issue of sexism. So what exactly is sexism? According to dictionary.com, it gives us three definitions. The first one is attitudes or behavior based on traditional stereotypes of gender roles. The second one is discrimination or devaluation based on a person's sex or gender. And the third one is ingrained and institutionalized prejudice against hatred of women. The reason why I'm giving a definition of sexism is because a lot of people assume that sexist attitudes are only presented against women and men, which is not true. However, today we are just going to focus on attitudes or behaviors based on traditional stereotypes of women. We divided our topic into mainly two sections, just as how we design our box and our installation. The two parts of sexism in the real or everyday life and sexism in the idealized or media world. In the first part, I will explain how sexism has evolved through history and into the present day, which includes an interview with someone who firsthand participated in the Women's March in New York this January. So first, let's talk about education. Education for girls historically has been secondary to that of boys. In colonial America, girls learned to read and write at dame schools. They could attend the master schools for boys when there was room, usually during the summer when most of the boys were working. By the end of the 19th century, however, the number of women students had increased greatly. Women obtained 19% of all undergraduate college degrees around the beginning of the 20th century, and by 1984, the figure has sharply increased to 49%. And today, women hold even more undergraduate degrees than men, which are 55%. However, women were long considered naturally weaker than men and unable to perform work requiring muscular or intellectual development. In most pre-industrial societies, for example, domestic chores were relegated to women, leaving heavier labor such as hunting and plowing to men. This ignored the fact that caring for children and doing such tasks such as milking cows and washing clothes, also required heavy, sustained labor. Another important factor that contributes to sexism towards women is maternity, a natural biological role of women. It has traditionally been regarded as their major social role as well. The resulting stereotype that a woman's place is in the home has largely determined the ways in which women have expressed themselves. Today, contraception and in some areas, legalized abortion have gave women greater control over the number of children they will bear. Although these developments have freed women for roles other than motherhood, the cultural pressure for women to become wives and mothers still prevent many talented women from finishing college or pursuing careers. In colonial America, women who earned their own living usually became seamstress or kept boarding houses. However, acceptable occupations for working women were limited to factory labor or domestic work. Women were excluded from professional jobs, except writing and teaching. In 1890, women constituted about 5% of the total doctors in the United States. During the 1980s, the proportion was about 17%, and today about 30%. Women also had not really improved their status in other professions. In 1930, about 2% of all American lawyers and judges were women. In 1989, about 22%. In 1930, there were almost no women engineers in the United States. And 60 years later, the proportion of women engineers was only 7.5%. United States. However, the great majority of women who work are still employed in clerical positions, factory work, retail sales, and service jobs. Women constituted more than 45% of the employed persons in the United States in 1989, but they had only a small share of the decision-making jobs. Although the number of women working as managers, officials, and other higher jobs has been increasing, in 1989, they were still outnumbered 1.5 to 1 by men. Despite the Equal Pay Act of 1963, women in 1970 were paid about 45% less than men for the same jobs. In 1988, about 32% less, and today about 20% less. Working women often faced discrimination on the mistaken belief that because they were married or would most likely get married, they would not be permanent workers. Despite their increased presence in the workforce, most women still have primary responsibility for housework and family care. The first Women's Rights Convention took place in Seneca Falls in New York in July 1848. The declaration that emerged was modeled after the Declaration of Independence, written by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. It claimed that all men and women are created equal, and that the history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man towards woman. Following a long list of grievances were resolutions for equitable laws, equal educational and job opportunities, and the right to vote, which was finally ratified on August 18, 1920. The 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution granted women the right to vote. I'm about to play an excerpt of a part of the interview I conducted with the public relations coordinator of the Women's March that occurred on January 21st, 2017 in New York. Her name is Teresa Ginsberg. From this interview, I got first-hand and primary information on someone who participated and played a major role in an anti-sexist movement. And because she was in Connecticut at the time, therefore we conducted a 20-minute interview over the phone. Here, I asked her questions such as, what was the intent behind the march, and how did the event come together? I also asked her views on sexism and what outcome and result does she hope to see as a result of the march. I also asked her questions about looking back at history to see what progress we have made, and also advice for the future generation. So here is an excerpt of the call.
Sexism is a deteriorating issue in our society that divides two equal humans without a reasonable cause. In its definition, it is the prejudice, stereotyping, discrimination solely on the basis of sex or gender. It is typically used against women, but in some cases it's also used towards men. It simply divides these two genders in our society. Men are also objectified in the media, but as opposed to women, they are less objectified. Sexism in the media has been a constant pattern repeated by society since the 1950s. It's almost a habit of society, and people don't really notice the detrimental effects it has on humans mentally and emotionally, especially in the media. Women are constantly discriminated and objectified simply because of their gender. So are men, but in much lesser ways. One of the great issues that stems from sexism in the media is objectification. The objectification of women is when women are reduced down to solely their body parts. They are mostly viewed as a physical object of male sexual desire instead of human beings. Therefore, they are placed below man as it is usually shown in the media. The effects that can be brought from objectifying women in society are mental health issues such as eating disorders, depression, sexual dysfunction. Other psychological consequences that come from objectification are appearance anxiety, struggle to live a normal life, low internal awareness, body consciousness, anxiety about personal safety, and well-being. The media outlets usually used to objectify women in the media are fashion campaigns, TV shows, movies, magazines, and ads. Young women are being hypersexualized, and the media has reinforced that it's normal when it's really not. The media sexually objectifies women in these magazine covers by focusing on their bodies and their aesthetic as a marketing strategy to sell their products. A study done to research how women are portrayed on screen in the top 500 films from 2007 to 2012 showed that 26.2% of women actors get partially naked on screen, while 9.4% of men get partially naked on screen. Statistics such as this one shows us the high amount of inequality that there is in the media and how dispersed the gap is between how high men are placed above women in the media and how low women are placed in the media. Gender inequality is clearly portrayed in the media, and it is growing every year more and more, as women are portrayed as minorities and men are portrayed as majorities. In the media, men are portrayed as strong, muscular, and mighty. They are the moneymakers and the head of the households. Men are portrayed as the ultimate protectors of women. Men are also sexually objectified in the media at times, but not as much as women are. Men are given bigger roles in the media, such as in the news as anchors and in TV as leading roles. There is a 5-to-1 ratio of men working to women in the media industry. The average ratio of male actors to female actors is 2.25 to 1. 63.4% of the media is controlled by men. It is clear that the gender inequality is prevalent in television, online, in print, and in all news topics.